Welcome to part 3 of my retrospective series on Telltale's The Walking Dead Season 1. In the previous part, I didn't do any preamble, but I would just like to welcome you and inform you that my video style and critique is improving with each and every video. I hope that you see that effort, and I would like to encourage you to watch all the parts and see my development. And hopefully the video's qualities will continue to improve. I have learned a lot doing this series. Anyway, let's get on with it, shall we? If you notice a change in my tone, I actually got sick between recording sessions for this video, so sorry about that, but let's dive right in. In episode 3, we start with Kenny and Lee roaming the desolate streets of Macon. This is mostly a catch-up. Kenny and Lee point out that scrounging the area for supplies is becoming more and more fruitless, with Lee pointing out he doesn't know how many more trips they have left in them for getting the remaining scraps in the city. The group has been surviving on these runs into the city. I assume they're procedurally generated, so each trip is different with virtually infinite replay value. Kenny will talk briefly about Lilly, and depending on whether you helped him or not, it changes the dialogue here.
You murdered her dad.
I did what I had to, and you know it.
Well, we killed her dad.
We did kill her dad.
You can straight up accuse Kenny of cold-blooded murder, or, if you helped kill Larry, you can point out that both of them are culpable in this situation. You can also choose dismissive dialogue options, but these are dismissively optimistic. He also mentions whether Clementine is still upset over taking things from the car they found in the previous episode. Once again, you can choose the optimistic dialogue options of she's fine with it, or you can point out that she is still stewing over it.
I haven't asked.
You even talk to that girl anymore?
I haven't asked.
Just gonna let it stew, huh?
He also brings up a more pivotal bit of information in my opinion. He and Duck lament over the death of Sean from the beginning of the game. Kenny carries immense guilt over what happened with Sean, because regardless of your choices early on, Kenny was too afraid to act to help potentially save Sean, instead of running away. I often may have read too much into it, but I believe Kenny is projecting when mentioning Duck here. This one throwaway line has importance later on, but we'll discuss that when we get to it. Another running theme in the game up until this point is that Kenny is protective of his family, while also being hot-headed, but he's actually pretty soft when it comes to action. I know I'm being a pedant here, but the part of this section where he attempts to pull you up regardless of his side being injured isn't the first time he's been ineffectual. He's one of the more interesting characters in the series, and I'll have a lot to say about them if I make a second video regarding this. So I will be bringing up things as I think they best serve the narrative in the video I'm trying to construct here. After Kenny drops you, we hear screaming in the distance. It's a woman desperately trying to get away from a small group of walkers that have surrounded her. She gets bit in the process. It's at this point Kenny arguably has the most evil idea I've heard from him, which is to leave her to suffer as she endures walker bites and being eaten alive.
Fuck, we gotta shoot her. Put her out of this
You
misery.
don't know we're here.
What do you mean?
I mean, we leave her alive, and she draws them all to her, buying us time. Yeah, think about it. We're always worrying about the ones we can't see. She stays alive and brings them all out of their holes.
Because the walkers will be drawn to her making the noise, they'll have enough time to clear out the last of the resources in the drugstore. I'd usually go for the mercy kill option, but there is arguably a very good justification in that you want to clear out the drugstore. This is the final trip that you are going to have the opportunity to do, so this one act of malevolence can be justified in that sense. I will say though that regardless of whether you kill her or not, it is possible to get all of the leftover items, so I feel like the choice isn't as meaningful. If there were too many items to collect unless you left her stranded and alive, then I would see more argument for this being a justifiable split in decision making. Depending on your choices earlier, the most prominent one being to help Kenny kill Larry or not, Kenny may or may not help you as you've been knocked over under a door by walkers. I can definitely understand why some folks would have a sour impression of Kenny. If you're not nice to him, he is really cowardly and a piece of trash sometimes. Either way, you're able to get out, and if Kenny doesn't help you, he comes up with an excuse, and that's the end of that.
What was that?
They're everywhere. You took care of yourself, didn't you?
We make our way back, and Kenny does his best Vincent impression.
We're fine, by the way.
Please would be nice.
Come again?
Also noteworthy here is how warm Lee is to Clementine after he arrives back. Their relationship is shown to grow progressively over the time skip here. Lily's plan is to maintain the scavenging to get through the winter, to which Kenny objects. I agree with Kenny here. They're holed up in a motel with bandits constantly pressuring them, and the group is low on resources. There were hints in the previous chapter about Kenny being able to get the RV running, and he seems to have managed it now, so I personally would want to leave the motel. From my perspective, staying in a place with consistent danger versus the risk of not finding a new place makes leaving worth the risk, because as it stands, the group certainly won't be making it through much more, especially given the bandits, which Lily notes haven't been giving them trouble for a few days. On top of this, the town is tapped and overrun with walkers, so it really does feel like everything is working against Lily here. There's also two different branching outcomes of what she says here. She either just accuses Kenny of killing her dad, or she accuses you both. Of course, depending on whether you helped or not. During the discussion, Kenny will also bring up your choice to either kill or spare the girl, with Carley seeing it as a hard choice regardless, and Doug being absolutely mortified at the decision making here. Lily explodes.
It's not going to be easier out on the road!
How would you know?
What I know? I know you're not above murder. I know somebody has been stealing our supplies. That's right, stealing! And I know the list of people I can trust here gets smaller every day! Now everybody get out!
We're prompted to talk to Lily about the missing supplies. She mentioned Carley and would like a moment to talk. This is where the joke that Carley is best girl comes from, and it's not because of the potential romance. It's cool there's potential for romance here, but the real reason she's best girl is because she knows about your past and encourages you to tell people that you've killed someone, which is a fantastic option only afforded to the player by Carley. There are other benefits to having Doug here though. It's just that I think that the freedom to confront your past is of great importance to the story, and why I find it so damning not to choose Carley over Doug on repeat playthroughs. Doug is fun and relatable and sets up tech and tools to help around the motel, and these bells aren't anything to sneeze at in episode 2, but his story essentially ends in episode 3 in a big way, and I wish they'd thought of more to do with him, if not confronting your past, something else. I will talk more about him a little later, but for now I wanted to be understood that Doug and Carley are equally noble. We just don't expect it from Doug as much as we do Carley. Carley represents the ideal of capability, whereas Doug's capability is more hidden and subtle, while also containing a jovial attitude throughout the game. When I was first writing the script, I also wanted to indicate that there's an issue of firepower in the scene coming up later, but my outlook on the situation changed after I understood what they were trying to do with Doug. I find them equal, if not viewing Doug as the better story option, regardless of the fact that I liked Carley more on my first playthrough. The little conversation with Carley here is endearing, and if you play your cards right, Lee will get a kiss on his cheek. Talking to Lily, it's clear that she's losing it, and I'm not surprised. Losing your dad the way she did, and to have the killer or killers in the group with you, is certainly not something I would wish on anyone. The fact that you have to rely on those people after having something like that happen to you is a horrifying concept. I used to view Lily as one of the weaker characters in the series because she just came off as a horrible bitch from the get-go, but if you understand and sympathize with her, this conversation brings to light just how complex she is. I'm very sympathetic to her after taking the time to do multiple playthroughs. I understand that she is in survival mode, and considering everything, I find her contributions enormous if not generous, especially if you assisted in killing Larry. Her actions in terms of leadership, management, and concerns for the group's survivability are almost, if not entirely, selfless. She's so much more than a grieving woman. She's fully realized, even if initial interactions weren't too great. She really does have a lot of redeeming characteristics characteristics and is also genuinely shocked that you left or killed an innocent suffering woman. Lilly tells us she has reason to believe that someone is stealing supplies and that they are also tampering with the Count. Lilly has been keeping her own because she's an all-or-nothing survivalist. She also found a broken flashlight, which is the hook of the setup. It is noteworthy because you wouldn't discard broken equipment in an apocalyptic setting when you can repair it. You either disagree with Lilly or agree with her, but either way, you're convinced to investigate. But someone has been listening to your conversation. Someone is very interested in helping you crack the case. Duck. Duck's involvement here is pretty cute. He's a goofy kid who doesn't grasp the gravity of the situation and is more excited to participate and help you crack the case, as it were. You can choose to have him help reluctantly or tell him he can't get involved, which is a pivotal choice because he gets involved anyway. This is your opportunity to talk with everyone about both the flashlight and your past if you have Carley. It was hard for me to confront Clementine on my first playthrough, and even harder if you lied to her in the drugstore in episode 1, because it's clear she thinks the world of Lee, and this information has the chance to change her view. She will also tell you about leaf rubbings, which is actually a useful bit of information, and no, I am not joking. Asking Clem about the flashlight leads to her admitting to putting bugs under Duck's pillow.
He's just always blaming me for stuff.
Like what?
Putting a bug on his pillow?
Did you do that?
Yes.
Kenny doesn't care what you did, but if you chose to be vague, he may wonder if it was for child endangerment, let's say, which leads Lee to being rather upset at the comparison. Despite that, the conversation goes well. It's also noteworthy that Kenny's only concern here is if you are an endangerment to the kids. Telling Katjaa leads to a conversation about what Kenny did in the meat locker. You can choose to tell her or not. It has an impact on how Katjaa views the situation on a minor level. She's mostly more concerned with Kenny's murderous intent rather than Lee's past. Kenny and Katjaa don't know about the broken flashlight, but Katjaa reveals she found some broken glass in an area where the dumpster was in the first episode. They've also made their peace with the idea that they'll never get along with Lilly at this point. They tolerate her presence in the group, but would like any excuse to throw her out. Ben is adamant he didn't break the flashlight. His response to Lee's past is more that he's shocked someone would share that level of information with him. We haven't gotten to know Ben very much, but he mostly appears to navigate the group as a naive kid, and it's hard to remember that given the current state of things. He's afraid of Lilly and her erratic behavior, which makes sense. Telling Lilly about your past reveals that she already knows, which makes sense that her dad would tell her. Not much to say here. She doesn't seem to appreciate or disregard the information. Inspecting the broken glass, we confirm it came from the flashlight given its shape, and we also find an X marked in pink chalk on the wall, to which Duck jumps in that this must be a clue. Duck is mostly absent until these moments pop up, so we don't get much insight into his mindset. Up until this point, he strikes me as an energetic kid with an infallible childlike wonder, which comes off as annoying to the group whose morale is low as can be. But maybe this is the method of coping with the world as he knows it, having fallen apart among the ruins. He finds hope and fun, and that's a beautiful thing. What I'm saying is, while many may not like Duck's antics, as with Ben, he's just a kid. He's probably also exhausted because I can't see Lee as someone who would lose his temper that easily. Okay, well, some versions of Lee at least. Inquiring about the chalk leads nowhere with the others. Ben doesn't appear to know anything. Katjaa mentions that Clem plays with chalk, and Clem says that her pink chalk went missing. Duck will find chalk dust on the makeshift gate regardless of whether you asked him to help or not, which also leads to...
Cool!
It's said that if you don't high-five Duck, you will never see heaven. Going through the gates and checking the outside grate, we find our missing supplies in a brown paper bag.
Huh. There's something in there. Huh. There's something in there. There's something in there.
Whatever you think of Lilly, her hunch was correct. Someone among us is a traitor. Showing the bag to Lilly leads to Lee and Lilly having a conversation on what's the best way to handle this situation, which gets interrupted by bandits immediately holding our group hostage. I wanted to note here that Ben was on watch, so he obviously didn't do the greatest job. This totally won't become a running theme. Lilly sneaks around back with Lee tasked to defusing the situation until Lilly can take the shot. I think most of the dialogue lines work here as opposed to being aggressive with Brenda, which ends up with you getting shot. Lilly takes the shot, which gives the group enough time to scramble and arm themselves. If you chose to save Carley, she'll take out 2 of the bandits. If you choose Doug, you could see apprehension when he raises the gun to shoot someone, missing the first shot and then taking out 1 bandit. Lee will have to take out an additional bandit if this is the case, and then shoot one of them in the arse. At least we know Izzy wouldn't have enjoyed this.
Izzy! No!
Niche reference. You take cover behind the RV and start slaying bandits as they pop up, like a very deadly version of whack-a-mole. But you also have to be careful because if you take too long, you'll end up getting shot yourself. Carley will help make the shooting part of this situation easier, whereas Doug will call shots and tell you which side people are coming from based on the noises the bells make. With all the chaos and noise being made, we now have an additional problem of walkers showing up. Lily's view of this being a sustainable place to stay is absolutely shattered in this moment. In the chaos, Katjaa and Duck are tripped up by a walker, and now the minigame switches to taking out walkers until all your crew can get to safety. If you chose Doug, there are a few differences here. Doug helps fix the RV, for example. Once everyone is in the RV, we plead for Lily to get down and get herself into the RV. Kenny seems content on leaving her because at this point their relationship has dissolved enough that there is no salvaging how they feel about each other. Kenny will point out in an earlier conversation that he doesn't see any hope of repairing their relationship, but he doesn't distrust her at the very least. With everyone in the RV, we speed away, leaving the motel behind us. Chaos ensues. Lily certainly doesn't make things easier, but in her defense, the group just lost everything, and this person stealing the supplies is definitely a good scapegoat for everything going wrong. But I can't imagine constantly fighting off bandits was sustainable either. So Lily's stubbornness not to leave the motel was also working against the group. The town was tapped and there's a finite amount of supplies. Now they have nothing due to a breakdown in communication between Lily and the rest of the group. The arguing is stopped by hitting something in the road. A walker is wedged underneath the RV, which gives Lily an opportunity to start accusing people of stealing supplies. As Lee, you can try to defuse the situation or become argumentative, but Lily is at her breaking point. Ben seems to crack under the pressure of the accusations, but at this point it's not enough for Lily. The culmination of her father's death at the hands of 1 or 2 of the group's members she's relied on, the constant accusations of being paranoid, being the least liked person in the group despite trying to maintain a dwindling leadership. She snaps.
Now, what the fuck's the problem?
This game has a slow boil to this moment, but it's executed perfectly for me. There is no excuse for Lily to be pulling the trigger here, but it makes so much sense in the context given everything we know about Lily's situation. It's a gut punch, and I must admit on first playthrough I did not care much for Lily, so this made me, who had given her the benefit of the doubt regardless of how I felt, feel so justified in my reaction afterwards.
You're not coming with us.
I'll die out here.
I don't care.
But because she kills either Carley or Doug, who were the most likable adult characters, and one of them being Lee's love interest, so fucking sickening. I made the joke about Carley being best girl, and that's mostly because she is the best female character, one that Lee can interact with on the same level as all the other adult characters. But I would not see this analysis as justified or complete without mentioning Doug as a character. Doug is often portrayed as the average Linux user, but he has such a capacity for empathy and willingness to put his life on the line even if it means his death, which is what happens here. If you chose Carley, Lily will shoot Carley in the head in cold blood. But if you chose Doug, she will try to kill Ben, and Doug will dive in at the last moment. Doug is such a noble and wonderful character that I find it genuinely shocking that for a long time he was the lesser of the two characters that I liked. His ability to cut tension in the drama, as well as being exceptionally useful in just about every facet of the game that he's involved in. I think he was underutilized in episodes, which I think would be most people's lasting impressions of him. He's the quiet hero in a lot of the scenes he's involved in. He's disarmingly charming in a way that I didn't appreciate for a very long time, and I've played these games a lot. Carley has a lot of interesting character traits herself. She tries to talk Lee up and really thinks the best of you. She encourages action from you and sees you as a stronger leader than Lilly or Kenny. You do the groundwork. You get things done while others fight all the time. Well, as long as you don't do a silent Lee playthrough. She's useful in a scrap and also tells you to back away from beating Andy into a pulp, which you can be left to do, leaving Andy completely disfigured from the encounter. She may not be tech savvy opposed to Doug, but where she lacks in technical know-how, she is a lot better at reading the emotions of Lee, being empathetic to him specifically. A lot of people may choose Carley on a first playthrough, but I'm going to be honest and encourage you to do a second playthrough with Doug so that you can come to your own conclusions based on how I feel about the choice here. Lily's behavior here is objectively reprehensible. She killed someone in cold blood during an argument. You cannot justify her actions and you're faced with a difficult choice, but also a point. Lee also killed someone in a dispute. We're not given the details on what happened that day, but it certainly was murder. And Lee telling people about it doesn't erase the fact that he's a free man in a post-apocalypse when he could have been locked in a cell until he died. It's kind of poignant how we treat an off-screen action as less impactful as something shown in the game. Lily even brings this to everyone's attention. Depending on whether you told people or not, you're either met with shock or Kenny dismissing what happened before the walkers is no longer important.
I don't care what he did before.
Are Lee's current actions enough to justify seeing him as more redeemable than Lily? I would argue that Lee's second chance was built on how he engaged with the current group, so his current group can make that call. Lily murdered someone in their small group of survivors. Something about that is worse to me. You can choose to leave Lily or have her come with you. Since I left her on my first playthrough and she doesn't really do anything other than steal the RV if you choose to let her back in,
I'm leaving.
Go. Now.
Come with me. We could take the RV right now. He left the keys in it.
No way.
Didn't think you would say yes.
I can't let you take the RV. Don't be crazy.
You're not letting me take it. Sorry, Lee. I really am.
I'll give my final thoughts on her. Lily is one of my favorite characters, even though I don't agree with most of her decision making. Some characters are portrayed in ways that evoke negative reactions, and when it's done right, it creates a character you can understand even if you don't agree with them. Lily lost everything apart from her dad, and then she lost that too. She then lost the supplies, and finally she lost the respect of the group. She may come across as bitter if you don't side with her on many issues, but if you do side with her, you see a far more empathetic side to her character. After losing Larry, if you helped try to save him, she'll look after Clementine and take a shot for you. She has an innate fear of abandonment and loss. I get the impression this isn't the first time she's been abandoned. This isn't the first time her dad's influence has caused her to struggle with interpersonal relations. She is a flawed character like every character in The Walking Dead, but she's also a survivor and for better or worse kept the group going many times when it would have fallen apart. Overall, I find her story tragic and I don't envy what she went through. There'll be more to discuss later on if I continue this series. After either abandoning Lily or having her get back in the RV, tied up and watched by Ben with a gun pointing directly at her, Kenny and Katjaa will beckon Lee to have a private discussion. Duck isn't feeling well and it's revealed that he has been bitten. and that it happened during the raid when a walker fell on them. I'd like to point out here that Katjaa, whether by luck or intention, was shielded from being bitten herself. She never mentions this, nor does it come up, but I can't help feel a part of her guilt about these events has to do with how it happened. Depending on whether you told Kenny and Katjaa about your past, Kenny will impart a line about keeping people in the dark about your past, or appreciate that you told them. One of the few reasons that on my first playthrough I appreciated that I chose Carley over Doug, especially because Kenny is another one of my favorite characters. But that's not to say I don't find the alternate route of absolute animosity between the two to be extremely compelling as well. Just an alternate route some people may go down. Lee is requested to tell Clementine about Duck's bite, which leads to one of my favorite interactions between the two characters.
Duck is bitten.
Huh?
He got bit by a walker trying to escape the motel.
I don't feel good. What about Doug?
There's nothing to say. It's horrible.
I'm sorry if
No, you don't apologize. You had nothing to do with it, Sweet Pea. My brother almost died once.
But he lived?
Oh yeah, it was scary though. This one time these boys from the other side of town were hassling him. He was on his bike and they were in a truck throwing things at him, calling their names, stuff like that. And this tough son of a gun, he pedals up after him, he catches him, he pulls his bike up alongside the truck and jumps into the back and starts beating on him. He teaches all three of them a lesson, but the truck's still moving, you see. Just as he stands up to jump out, it zooms underneath a tree and a branch hits him square in the face and he goes flying out the back. Anyway, if he can live through that, I'm sure Duck can live through this.
Most of Clementine's discussion with Lee have this masked maturity from her, where she's trying to be big and strong like her adult role models. But here, her childhood friend, she knows what a bite means, but it's the first time we've really been able to see defeated emotions from her in a situation that doesn't involve life or death. Clementine is more than just a kid. She's also guarded as a person, and we can see that development in Lee's interactions with her. There's no fooling her, and earning her trust is not as easy as it would be with most kids. She asks about Carley or Doug, and it's pointed out there was no time to mourn before moving on. She reflects on these facts, and Lee tries to diffuse the inherent difficulties she's having coming to terms with everything that's just happened. She replies to you saying that you're glad that you have her with you by stating she thought about dropping a hammer on Lee's head. A nice bit of consistency because she gives you a hammer to kill the zombie babysitter. She also talks about how there was a stranger before who tried to rob the place, but he wasn't very smart about it. Not only was the door glass so easy to break, but it was also unlocked. So maybe the hammer would have been more merciful than the continued existence of such a bad break-in on your conscience. Alive Inside plays throughout this conversation, and has started to become a staple when Lee and Clementine have a scene. Or it is just played when anything involves Clementine. Lee and Clem fall asleep, leading to a jump scare of zombie Clementine with Lee being overpowered before he wakes up.
Fuck! What happened? Holy shit! Get off of me!
This isn't just a cheap jump scare. We've seen Duck's doomed fate play out before us, and with this being a game largely about people driven by family or found family and protecting them at any cost, the zombie Clementine is a representation of Lee's anxieties for her future and him not wanting for Clementine to end up like Duck. So this serves more purpose than, oh god, zombie Clem, what the fuck? It's also worth noting the lack of control Lee had in the situation. He woke up and she was a zombie. This could just happen to her, and there's nothing stopping what happened to Duck happening to her while he sleeps, when he's not around. What if Duck turned and bit her? This aspect of agency and parental responsibility is something parents in our non-apocalyptic world have to deal with, regardless of it being life or death situations. Lee protects Clementine no matter what, even involving things she may not yet understand. She may be more capable and competent than, say, Duck, but she's still inexperienced, and it would only be a matter of time before she starved to death in her treehouse. What I'm saying is that this dream pushes the narrative forward while also being a jump scare. Haunting of Hill House has jump scares, but they serve to push the narrative. Other games take concepts like a jump scare and roguelite and use them to create a narrative. A jump scare is a tool in the writer's arsenal, and I think we can look beyond what the shock value is to tie to the greater purpose. Perfect. After Lee wakes up properly, Kenny has to stop the RV because there's a train in the middle of the road. Duck really isn't looking so great, and Clementine shows non-verbal concern. Kenny also doesn't want to talk about Duck at any cost. You and Ben search the train where you can find some water. If you speak to Katjaa, she'll mention that Duck's thirsty. Katjaa will also lament that he's allergic to bees. Often in coming to terms with something as dire as death, especially of a loved one, you'll cut back to that mundane detail that ties us to the love we feel while also being relevant to the current situation. So it makes sense. Katjaa as a character also has a medical background and serves as the group's doctor. If you left Lilly on the side of the road, Katjaa will agree with your decision and that boundaries have to be set. Clementine is also quiet with nothing much to say other than focusing on what's happening with Duck. Speaking to Ben about leaving Lilly will result in an unsure response. Sure, we've killed walkers before and people that deserved it in some cases, but this was different. Ben has never seen someone kill someone in cold blood with no justification. Checking the front carriage, we get a slight subversion of our expectations.
We got one. Walker, sitting in the chair. We got him.
Do nothing.
I actually liked TLJ, I just found the joke funny, where a dead guy actually isn't a zombie. If we're going to analyze his wound, I can't say exactly what killed him. I'd assume at some point during the time frame we have, he was driving the train only to be hit in the head by some kind of projectile. Something clearly flew through the window, but not the other side, and none of the dashboard control panel is damaged, so it'd have to be something that dissolved, but if that were the case, truth is I don't know, it may have just been a rock and that's okay. We see a blinking light, which Ben immediately pushes, and we give it to him. That was the right thing to do. It was just the brakes. This immediately gets Kenny's attention. This is a small glimpse of hope. Getting the train running is a fantastic idea and gives them a huge transport advantage. There's a cost though, and some more astute people might have noticed the problem, but we'll save that for later. For now, Lee is tasked with getting the train moving. If you're explorative, you can also grab a box of crackers for a duck from a zombie inside a car, which I always forget to do. Clementine taught us about leaf rubbings earlier. The game hits you over the head with this one a little bit for how to read the indented pencil marks on the paper. I think this is a clever bit from a game design perspective because often in point-and-click adventure games, you'll be left in the dark about details like this, and it does lead to situations where you're just randomly and desperately trying things until something works. But they didn't need to hit you over the head that much, in my opinion. Reading the instructions is pretty straightforward, with Kenny praising you at every point in the task, which feels like he's trying desperately to forget all the shit he's probably going through. The train is running, but now they're stuck, the damaged motor carriage at the back keeping them from going forward. Kenny insists that you get us unstuck. Fixing this problem and going back into the carriage introduces us to a new character.
You touch any of my stuff?
Chuck, who creeps Lee out, and that may be a very good gut reaction. Being cautious around new people at this point is kind of understandable. Chuck reveling in this fact is not helping either. He's already met the rest of the group and has made himself comfortable, and he even gave the kids candy, including Ben, who seems ashamed to be lumped in with the kids, but is grateful for the candy. Lee does inquire if the candy had a funny aftertaste to Clementine, or anything that would indicate drugging or poisoning. Questioning Chuck reveals that he's quite guarded, even though he would like to be accepted into the group. Kenny seems to have given himself a new purpose, with the consistent character trait of vehicle repair and maintenance being a common theme in his approach to problems. When everything else is falling apart, Kenny approaches problems he can solve, like getting something moving. Being on the road is safer than staying in one place to him. If there's a wreck, he wants to fix it. That's the consistent way he keeps going, despite everything. There are multiple situations where you can mention Duck to him, but they always felt partially annoying as options. Of course they're going to have to deal with Duck, but damn man, let Kenny have a break, you know? He tells the group to grab whatever they have and to get on the train, with Clementine mentioning Duck's condition, to which Kenny is extremely hostile. He's also hostile towards Chuck, which ties into a running theme of the group being untrusting of new people, which makes sense given the concept of having been fed human meat before. I don't know, that would make me apprehensive to trust people. The train ride is silent with Kenny at the helm. Chuck mentions it must be difficult to take care of 3 kids, which makes sense. Ben is a kid too, older but still learning how to navigate the world. Chuck offers sympathy towards Duck's condition, which is interrupted by Lee needing to help wipe blood off Duck's face. She mournfully tells Lee that she needs Kenny. Now more than ever, Kenny doesn't want to think about it. He's in denial. He can't handle the thought even for a moment, and doesn't even stop to consider that Katjaa is dealing with this all by herself. You have many options on how to confront Kenny about the situation. However, if you talk to him here, it will be moving.
You need to stop the train. Kenny.
What?
Ken.
What the hell's that?
Your son's blood.
Get out of here, Lee.
You know he's dying.
Nobody knows shit. He'll be fine.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't talk like that right now.
Go back there and tell my wife everything will be fine. What is the goddamn deal? He's a little sick, but we can't just quit. It's a scratch. He's not like the others. Jesus, all y'all are just making it worse.
This isn't about Duck.
The hell it's not. You think we're pals and you know me? You're some elitist prick with a fancy education who could pick me apart?
It's not like that.
The fuck it isn't.
You think you're the reason Duck was bitten? Like you had this coming or something? You didn't kill Herschel's son.
Yes, I did. And now it's catching up to me.
That's not what went down. You looked out for your kid, and a bad thing happened to someone else's.
There ain't no way this world lets my son live when I help put someone else's in the ground.
That's not the way it works. You know that. Stop the train, man.
But arguably more moving is the fight that you can have with him here.
Kenny.
What?
Ken.
What the hell's that?
Your son's blood.
Get out of here, Lee.
You know he's dying.
Nobody knows shit. He'll be fine.
Wake the fuck up, man. This is over. He's dead.
Don't you tell me to wake up. I got a real family I'm trying to protect, not that fucking sham you're running back there.
I don't know what the hell is wrong with you, but you need to lock it up. Be a man here.
Oh, you want a piece of me? Is that it?
Yeah, I do. You're acting like nothing's wrong, and somebody's gotta knock some sense into you. I told Katjaa I'd get you to stop this, and you bet your ass I'm gonna. I've had your back. Don't make me fucking regret it. You want to hurt people because you're afraid. Losing Duck ain't enough for you. Because you fucking lose everything acting like this. I'll fucking kill you before I let that happen. I'm sorry.
Choosing to fight Kenny, for that to be a representation of your relationship, even if you've been nice to him, taken his side, you have to knock some sense into him to show him that he needs to deal with this, that his family needs him now, and no amount of yelling will fix this. Conversely, what if you disagreed with him for everything, every situation, and yet here you find it in yourself to talk him down, to show compassion to a man you've been through so much with, to maybe mend things. It's finally time to see eye to eye and help each other, because like it or not, you're all each other has. There are less nuanced ways for this to play out, but like it or not, you'll help Kenny see what he needs to do, regardless of how Kenny feels about you, and the train stops. The music swells as Katjaa holds the dying Duck in her arms, knowing there's only one solution. Kenny tries bargaining, but Katjaa's realism shows him that that's not how things will happen. Despite how much Kenny pleads, there's only one way to prevent him from becoming a walker. There's no resolution to this where Duck lives. You can offer to shoot Duck. There's many ways to interpret your response here. For some people, having a parent need to do that is unthinkable. Why not a friend, or at least a caring member of the group? You could also see it the other way, that it's the parent's duty, and this final act in some way saves Duck from a fate that we assume is worse than death. Would you love your son so much that taking his life was the only way to alleviate his suffering? Could you do that? The Walking Dead offers that as the two options. In both of them, Duck dies, but you're left to think about what views you'd have in the situation, and that's why it's powerful. You give Katjaa, Kenny, and Duck a chance to go into the woods and say their final goodbyes. Clementine asks what's happening, and you can try to soften the blow or be more direct. Either way, Clementine knows what is happening, and there's nothing you can do to make it any less traumatizing.
What are you doing?
I'm killing him.
For good?
Yes. So he doesn't.
If you suggest a parent should do it, Katjaa says that she'll do it and takes Duck into the woods, leaving Kenny behind. Either way, a gunshot goes off, Kenny yells, or Kenny runs to the scene, and what you see before you is Katjaa lying in a pool of her own blood. Kenny weeps over her. She may have been barely holding it together, but this final goodbye was the nail in the coffin. There is no world in which she could live without Duck. When she said she loved Duck more than life itself, she meant it. There was no option, no out from this. Duck was gone, and she would be too. I found Katjaa as a character interesting in a few ways. She's clearly very much kind, understanding to a fault, and loves Kenny and Duck, absolutely. She's clearly a pacifist and takes issue with killing and violence even out of necessity. I don't doubt she would have taken the bite in place of Duck if she had a second more to react. She's clearly been taught to value all life and laments that Kenny is utilitarian in his approach to keeping them alive. Somehow it destroys her sense of self. On the surface level, you may not notice the nuances of her character and how she's set up as someone clearly depressive and every day is a struggle, but she keeps telling herself that as long as Duck is around, life should go on, even without explicitly saying it until the very end. A common problem with depression is that people often cling to the narrative that if they lose one more thing, that'll be enough for them to kill themselves. And I think that was laid out well, and this is a harrowing conclusion of her overall mindset. I get the impression that if she had had the mantra of one more day, she could see herself carrying on with Kenny, but sometimes that reality never comes to pass, and we lose a lot of people from that split-second decision they make in the moments of weakness. When she said she didn't like carrying a gun all the time, she meant it, because she saw that as an option if something bad enough happens. Kenny looks over Duck with gun in hand and pleads to Lee about what they should do. As I've laid out before, there are justifications for both options in this moment. One would maybe say it's a parent's responsibility and is the last choice they make for their child to provide the best option and closure, or that no parent should have to pull the plug because they'd carry that with them forever and potentially wonder if that was the correct choice. I had a friend who I lived with and her dad. She was very sick, and many nights there was a need to help and care for her a lot. And some of my formative years as a young adult included helping one of my best friends move and be carried around the house, and also trying to help her go to the hospital to get the treatment she needed, knowing that getting better was a far-fetched option. The night we lost her, her boyfriend arrived, and it was just one of many nights we had taking care of her. I was quite sick myself, and at the time, struggling. But she passed at 3 a.m. that fateful night, and I look back on that wondering if I had made a mistake, even though her passing wasn't something any of us could control. I still wonder if I had been insistent on taking her to the hospital, would the result have been different? If I do a review of Season 2 of this game, there's another character I would like to talk about revolving around these similar issues, and I just thought I would mention it here because it ties in so well with the narrative of losing a loved one in a tragic way, and that affecting everything. And I can't help but feel that Katjaa, maybe if I had an easy way out during that time, maybe it would have happened to me too. But there's always a reason to go on, and if anything, we should persist for those that we lost along the way. Because I understand what Katjaa was going through. If I could have done anything or made a choice where the outcome involved her surviving, I'd have happily placed my own life on the line. I think anyone who's experienced great loss will be left to wonder about these things because it felt so real. I didn't know if I could carry on, and maybe if I had an easy way out, I wouldn't have been here either. Her impact on my life was similar to having a sister, and there's not a day I go without carrying that with me. For a game to carry that much power and emotional maturity, to give this moment the weight it deserves, is why I think Telltale gained the reputation for having meaningful games. A common criticism being that choices inevitably lead to similar outcomes, but I don't think that's a bad thing. For me, it's not about some big choice changing the fate of everyone involved. It's about the moments where the game sends a message. Duck as a character may have come across as an annoying kid to some, which functioned as a foil to Clementine in many ways. Where Clementine seems years older in wisdom despite being 9, Duck provides us a character who is a kid with a childlike wonder and naivety in any given scenario. He has absolute confidence that his parents will take care of him no matter what, and he's actually really likable to me. Why not let a kid enjoy being alive? Maintaining optimism is the point, isn't it? To build a future where kids like him can flourish. We see criticism to this point immediately when Lee talks to Clem about what happened, and she doesn't want to talk about it given that Chuck has told her what happened to Duck will inevitably happen to her. Lee's attempts to protect Clem mirror the preservation of their childhood the way Kenny and Katjaa protected Duck, and it's fair to point out that that's simply not an option if Clem wants to survive. Lee won't be around to protect her, and it's clear he knows anything could happen even while he's sleeping. Talking to Chuck about this, he explains his point of view, and Lee doesn't have a response that agrees with him. Lee is, for the most part, defensive because Clementine means everything to him. Chuck points out 3 things Clem needs to know if she isn't to share Duck's fate, and he has a point. The world isn't going to get better soon, or ever, and there's good reason for him to teach her how to use a gun, cut her hair, and have a plan. This functions as the next puzzle section, with Kenny being completely non-verbal after so much, but offering him a drink allows you to grab the map. Typical little set up for a point and click part of the game. And honestly, getting a bit tipsy is probably warranted in this situation. Ben confesses to you that he was slipping the bandit supplies on your way back, which is one flaw I'd say with the pacing of this revelation, because anyone can come to that conclusion without knowing it, because of how he cracked under the interrogation, and another line showing Lee suspects him early on. You can threaten to kill him here, and however you've been playing Lee, this can be a consistent response from him or wildly out of character, especially given how serious the threat is being presented. You teach Clementine to shoot with a small mini-game. You can also give her some advice about taking her first shot. Second, you can come up with a plan. You can choose a plan that doesn't involve Kenny, like looking for her parents, which may be more an attempt at comfort rather than an actual plan, though it plays out like Lee wants this to be the option. She reluctantly allows you to cut her hair, Lee offering a reason from the second episode when Andy grabbed her by the hair, a solid bit of continuity. The train is stopped suddenly and Kenny yells. There's an oil truck hanging over a bridge blocking the railroad. Kenny rightfully loses it.
Fuck!
With Ben suggesting a ridiculous solution.
Walk? That's fucking stupid, Ben.
Just picked up some.
Chuck tries to bring a semblance of optimism that this can be figured out, but this comes across as tone deaf because Kenny is rightfully all over the place about this. We're then introduced to Christa and Omid, who are at the top of the bridge. You can reassure that you're friendly, but there's honestly no reason for either side to believe that, and given the group's interactions with newcomers, this could go pear-shaped quickly. Kenny assures Lee that if anything goes wrong, they won't escape. Kenny, of course, being in a really dark place. Climbing up, we get to interact with both of them. Omid seems chipper, while Christa is withdrawn, and the more guarded of the two, which is an interesting dynamic since they're together. Clem also chose to climb the ladder, and Lee reprimanded her for it. From this point on, Clem becomes a more active participant in events, and that means that Lee has more chances to criticize and guide her over being the protector. They're starting to become more of a team. It's also very much a pseudo-father-daughter relationship, as well as master-apprentice setup. Don't tell Anakin. The difficult part of this situation is you want Clementine to be cautious and smart in situations because she's young and small, and she's often brazen and headstrong in scenarios that could end badly if she doesn't follow Lee's instructions. The story is starting to pivot more towards what's best for her survival now that Lee understands how important it is to teach her survival rather than being the reason she survives. Omid and Christa point out that the tankard could be cut down from this side, and I don't know how that's going to help things. I mean, either situation is risky, and I get that crashing a train into it may not be the best idea. Cutting it down and having it fall might also run the risk of an explosion, and once it's down, there's no reason to believe it wouldn't block the track anyway. What, are we just gonna push it out the way? I can suspend my disbelief a certain amount in these stories, and at the end of the day, there's always going to be goofy moments in a point-and-click adventure, but something about this feels out of place in a more grounded world than, say, aka Monkey Island, a series I also adore. Either way, we can find some tape in a nearby ambulance and we're set off to explore our surroundings. Kenny immediately starts teaching Omid how to drive the train if something happens to him, which I find odd because at this point Kenny has every reason not to trust them. The introduction seems a bit rushed, but it's probably a good idea they get integrated as fast as possible, but a few times throughout the story they seem to behave as if they've been with the group the whole time, which I find bothersome. You could talk to Omid about history after talking to Christa about your shared interest. She provides us with a bit of tonal whiplash by being on board with Clementine learning to shoot while also coming across as stern about it. We're set to explore the abandoned train station with Clementine, and this is our first glimpse into how both of them work as a team. It's an upgrade from when she was needed to climb through the vents in the second episode, because now it's handled with enthusiasm, Lee being on board with her helping. There's various signs that this place once harbored survivors, but either they've moved on or the area isn't safe. Lee lifts Clementine into a window to see if there's anything inside, but she manages to find the latch to open the door. It's a dark room, so Lee uses his only weapon to hold the door open, which I always thought was a silly move to do. Even if you don't see walkers, the fuckers have been shown to be great at sneaking up on you. I'm sure there was nothing else in the room that they could have used. Clem being small works to our benefit as she's able to fit through the bars above the cage, which is great. I love when characters work together and play on their strengths. It's really nice to have characters with complementary abilities and weaknesses. Lee and Clem's duo really does highlight this. Lee manages to drop his gun when two walkers approach and he has to pummel them with the weapon he left at the door. I don't know where they came from, but it seems a little out of place. Then something extremely mortifying happens.
It's okay. Everything's fine. Keys, now!
Clem has no real means of escape, but luckily the gate keys are stored inside the closed gate. Now, this makes little sense, but we can actually find a reason for this. If I wanted to survive walkers for a good length of time, but I needed somewhere to sleep, behind a cage is a good enough place to barricade myself during the nights. So that's easy to explain. There's a tight QTE which involves grabbing the keys and using the keys on the door and then shooting the walker. This comes across as a little clunky because if you hit the wrong button, Lee will mention that the door is locked, which, yeah, just use the key, please.
God damn.
That didn't go so good.
No, it did not go so good.
Hearing the gunfire, Christa rushes over to see what's happening and finds the 3 dead walkers, to which she, once again, questioned Lee's mentorship of Clementine, and I don't like Christa at this point. The question of whether Clementine needs to learn to survive was already resolved in Lee's mind, and now we have a character questioning mundane methods like being on the front line with Lee. If she was so worried about Clementine, then why not join and help? Now, there is a reason for this that we can discuss later, but for now I didn't have a good impression of her on my first playthrough. Returning with the blowtorch and patching up the pipe, we get a slight bit of humor as Omid objects to being dangled over the edge to cut the tank down, only for Lee to do it to him anyway. Something I mentioned earlier involved how a train may not be the best mode of transport in a setting where noise draws hostiles like walkers, and we can see that while traveling, a herd of walkers has formed in our wake and are heading right for us. Luckily, we can cut the tanker down, and if you're quick enough, Lee can knock the blowtorch into the leaking gas, which bursts into flame. This doesn't seem to slow down the walkers all that much, so I'm not sure whether this had any purpose. The ladder down to the train collapses. Lee signals to Kenny to go. Lee and Omid have to jump onto the train. On my first playthrough, I pushed Omid thinking he would die otherwise.
I will! You son of a...
And he injured his leg, which I thought was a direct consequence of that action. But he injures his leg anyway. Lee makes it into the train, and we're offered a choice between saving Omid or Christa first. Either of them detest being saved first, but both make it onto the train. I usually save Omid first because he's injured, and that makes the most sense, even if he's a little misogynistic about it.
You piece of shit! She's a woman!
Tankard behind us, walkers long gone, and train running smoothly.
We set off to Savannah.
Lee and Kenny looking forward as the sun sets, reflecting on everything that's happened. Lee explains which plan he and Clementine decided on while she sleeps. The walkie-talkie fizzles to life as an unnamed voice comes over the talkie, speaking about he has her parents and how she mustn't tell Lee about him. Thank you for watching. We're more than halfway through my review and critique of the Telltale Walking Dead video essay. It's been a learning experience. I've gotten feedback and comments and support, and I would like to keep doing this. And there are 2 parts left in this entire series, and I look forward to working on them. And just, if you've been watching and supporting me, thank you. I've really put as much heart and soul into this as I can. I felt that part 2 fell a bit flat, and I hope that I've improved it in some way, making this particular one. But yeah, if you would like to support me, my Patreon, which is it's a pipe dream that people would support me on Patreon, is down below, along with my Ko-fi. You can just send me money casually, I guess. And also my Twitch, because I stream games on Twitch. But that's all for this video, and I'm sorry that part 2 felt a bit weaker. I was struggling a little bit. So I'm going to try and keep up the quality for this next one. Anyway, go learn a new skill. Teach yourself chess or something. I don't know. See you in the next one. Bye.